I stared at my laptop screen, frozen. My college fund, the one I'd built since I was 16, saving every birthday dollar, every part-time paycheck, was gone. Zero. Dad said it was just a loan, that he'd pay it back once his business deal went through. But when I found out what that deal really was, my hands shook so hard I dropped my phone. He hadn't paid off a loan. He'd gambled it all. And worse, he'd done it under my name. My life, my credit, my dream of college. All buried under his addiction. That night I swore one thing. He took my future. I'd take his peace. And that's how my revenge began. I still remember the sound my laptop made when the page refreshed. A soft click before my entire world went silent. Balance, $0. My college fund. The account I'd built since I was 16. Every babysitting job, every shift at the diner, every dollar my grandmother had tucked into birthday cards. Gone. I blinked, thinking maybe I'd typed the wrong password. I tried again. Still zero. I checked my transaction history. There was a full withdrawal made 2 weeks ago. By my father, Martin Cooper. At first I thought it had to be a mistake. Maybe he was transferring it temporarily. Maybe it was fraud. Anything but him. When I walked into the living room, he was sipping coffee like nothing had happened. "Dad," I said, voice trembling. "My account's empty." He didn't even look up. "Yeah, sweetheart. Borrowed it. I'll pay it back soon." Borrowed it. Like I was a bank. I stood there frozen, watching him scroll through his phone. "That money was for college," I whispered. "My tuition's due in 3 weeks." He sighed. "I know, Jade. But I had to handle some loans. Just business stuff. I'll make it right." His tone was so calm, so casual it made me feel crazy for panicking. But deep down something felt wrong. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't sorry. Mom Clara walked in drying her hands. She avoided my eyes. "It's just temporary," she said softly. "Don't make this harder than it already is." Harder for who? For him. I wanted to scream, but instead I went to my room, locked the door, and stared at the empty balance again. 4 years of savings. 4 years of planning. Gone with one transfer. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing his voice. "I'll make it right." But what did that even mean? The next morning, I woke up to muffled voices coming from the kitchen. I pressed my ear against the door. "Yeah, I moved the money," Dad whispered. "No one can trace it to her, right?" Froze. My heartbeat hammered in my chest. To her. My mother's tone was sharp, almost panicked. "Martin, what if she finds out what you really used it for?" He hushed her. "She won't. I'll fix it before she starts college." Before she starts college. What was he talking about? I stepped back, trembling. My dad, the man who taught me to never lie, even if it hurts, was lying to me. And for the first time in my life, I didn't recognize his voice. When I turned toward my room, my reflection in the mirror stopped me cold. Tears streaked down my face. I looked like a stranger. That's when it hit me. I hadn't just lost my money. I'd lost my father. 3 days passed. Dad acted like nothing happened, and Mom refused to talk about it. But then came the call. It was around 10 a.m. I was getting ready for work at the bookstore when my phone buzzed. "Hello, is this Jade Cooper?" A woman's voice asked. "Yes. This is Monica from First City Bank. I'm calling regarding your pending payment on a personal loan." "What loan?" Cut her off. She hesitated. "A $12,000 loan taken last month under your name." The room spun. I almost dropped my phone. "That's not possible," I stammered. "I've never taken a loan." She apologized, said she'd send me a verification letter, and hung up. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. That evening I confronted Dad again. He didn't even deny it this time. "Look, Jade, I needed your name for some short-term paperwork. I'll fix it before it affects you." My voice cracked. "You used my name. My identity. It's all family," he said, waving his hand like I was overreacting. "You'll understand when you're older." Older? I was 18. An adult whose life he was wrecking in real time. I spent that night tearing through old family files, bank letters, receipts, password notes. And then I found it. A small leather notebook in his desk drawer. Inside were scribbles of numbers, betting odds, and strange initials. GCTRL. Next to each amounts. Thousands. Tens of thousands. He wasn't paying loans. He was gambling. My body went cold. The man who raised me on lessons about responsibility had burned my future in a game of chance. The next morning, a black SUV parked across the street. A man in a gray jacket leaned against it, smoking. He looked right at me. When I stepped outside, he smiled. "Tell your father," he said, voice calm but sharp. "The deadline's tonight." He flicked his cigarette, got in the car and drove off. That's when I realized, this wasn't just debt. It was danger. The bank letter arrived 2 days later. My hand shook as I opened it. Inside were loan documents, signed with my name, my signature, my ID number. But it wasn't my handwriting. I stormed into the living room, waving the papers. "Did you forge this?" he yelled. Dad looked pale but defiant. "You think I wanted to?" "I was desperate." Mom started crying, whispering, "Please, Jade, don't make this worse." "Worse." Snap. "He stole my identity. He committed fraud in my name." That night I called the bank and explained everything. The woman sighed. "If the loans were signed digitally under your verified ID, it may be hard to dispute." My stomach twisted. Dad must have used my saved files, my ID scans from college applications. The next day I got an email from my dream university. "Your admission has been suspended due to financial verification failure." That's when I broke. I collapsed on the floor, screaming. Everything I'd worked for gone. Dad avoided me for days. He was still drinking, still making business calls. Mom pretended everything was fine. But at night I heard them arguing. "You said you'd fix it," she cried. "I'm trying," he hissed back. "Grant was supposed to handle it." Grant. My uncle. My father's older brother, a smooth-talking investor, who always had cash but never said from where. The next morning I confronted him over the phone. "Uncle Grant," I said, "do you know about Dad's gambling?" There was silence. Then a soft chuckle. "You're a smart girl, Jade. But some things are better left alone." That voice. Cold. Like I was a problem he might have to deal with. Later that day I got another call. This time from a blocked number. A man's voice said, "Stop asking questions if you want to stay safe." That was the night I packed my bags. I left home with nothing but a backpack and my laptop. I started over. Small apartment. Part-time job at a cafe. No college, no savings, but at least peace. Or so I thought. 3 weeks later, Dad walked into my workplace. He looked broken. Dark circles under his eyes, clothes wrinkled, hands shaking. "Jade," he whispered, "I need help." I stared at him from behind the counter. "You already took everything," I said quietly. "I just need a few hundred more. Just this once." Something inside me snapped. "You forged my name," I said, voice rising. "You destroyed my credit. I lost my admission, Dad. My future. And now you want more." He looked around nervously like he was ashamed, but still desperate. "I'll pay it back, I swear." I laughed bitterly. "That's what you said last time." He tried to reach for my hand. Pulled back. "Don't touch me." When he left, Liam, my coworker and closest friend, came up to me. He'd heard everything. "That's identity theft, Jade," he said. "You can report him." "I can't put my own father in jail," I whispered. Liam hesitated. "Then he'll keep ruining you." That night, as I sat alone, I checked my credit report. There were 3 more active loans. All under my name. Totaling nearly $40,000. I couldn't breathe. My father was still using me. The next morning, Liam found me at the cafe, eyes swollen from crying. He placed a small folder on the counter. "I looked up the law," he said softly. "You might have a case, if you can prove he did it." I stared at him, half terrified, half determined. I'll prove it, I said. Every last bit of it. I waited until Saturday, when my parents went to a family barbecue. Then I took the spare key from under the porch mat and stepped inside. The house felt smaller, quieter. The air smelled like old coffee and cigarette smoke. I went straight to Dad's office, the room he always kept locked. Inside, chaos. Papers, folders, crumpled bills everywhere. I turned on my phone's flashlight and began searching. Old receipts, betting slips, email printouts. Then, in a stack of envelopes, I found them. Contracts with my name and fake signatures. Every loan. Every false account. All signed Jade Cooper. I took pictures of everything. Scanned documents into my cloud. Then I noticed something new. An email thread between Dad and Grant. Transfer done. Used her name again. He'll never trace it. My blood ran cold. Dad hadn't just used me. He'd been working with his brother, laundering gambling money through my identity. Suddenly I heard the front door creak. My heart froze. A step. Heavy. Low. Jade. Dad's voice. What are you doing here? I panicked, hid my phone in my pocket and turned around. Looking for answers, I said, trembling. He looked at the documents in my hand, and his face changed. All the warmth vanished. You shouldn't have seen that, he said quietly. Then he took a step closer. Dad, what are you doing? I whispered. He reached out, voice low. You're going to make things very complicated for everyone. I backed away toward the door, clutching the files. Not for me. Not anymore. And then I ran. That night, I uploaded everything to Liam's computer. He looked at me with a mix of fear and awe. Jade, he said slowly, you just exposed a crime ring. I didn't answer. My hands were still shaking. Because deep down I knew. This was only the beginning. Liam spent the night analyzing every file I found. His desk was covered in open laptops, coffee cups, and scribbled notes. At 2 a.m. he finally looked up. Jade, he said quietly, your dad didn't act alone. I frowned. What do you mean? He turned his screen toward me. A web of bank accounts, names, and transactions. Look at this. The gambling payments didn't go to random casinos. They went to a company called G&G Holdings, owned by your Uncle Grant. I felt the air leave my lungs. So he used me to cover for his brother. Exactly. Your dad took the heat, but Grant was the one collecting the money. The next day, I went to Uncle Grant's office. He always had that smug smile, gold watch, tailored suit, and fake charm. Jade. What a surprise, he said, gesturing for me to sit. I just came to ask why you used my name, I said coldly. His smile didn't even falter. You've been reading too much, sweetheart, he said. Your dad borrowed from me, that's all. I leaned forward. Then why are my bank records linked to your company? For the first time, his eyes flickered. Careful, Jade, he said softly. Some questions don't have answers you'll like. I stood up. Then maybe the police can help me find them. The silence that followed was thick and dangerous. He smiled again, but this time there was venom in it. You're your father's daughter after all, stubborn. When I left the office, my hands were shaking. My phone buzzed a few minutes later. Unknown number. You shouldn't have gone to him. That night, Liam installed a hidden camera in my apartment, just in case. I tried to sleep, but my mind was a storm. How far did this go? How many lies had they built on my name? 2 days later I found out. A letter arrived from a private investigator I'd anonymously hired online, an old college friend of Liam's. He'd traced transactions showing that Grant and my father had opened 5 different accounts under fake names, all using my student ID number as their tax reference. They were laundering money. When I showed the report to Liam, his face turned pale. This is big, he whispered. You can't handle this alone. I looked at him and said, then help me expose them. The next week felt like a movie. Only I wasn't the hero yet. Liam helped me file a fraud and identity theft complaint with the local authorities. We attached every screenshot, every document, every forged signature. When the investigator, Officer Reynolds, saw the file, he frowned deeply. "Your father and uncle have been on our radar," he said. "But we never had proof connecting them to laundering. This might be it." The next 48 hours were chaos. Police showed up at my parents' house with a warrant. Neighbors gathered outside, whispering as officers carried out boxes of files and computers. Mom called me in tears. "Why are you doing this to us?" I wanted to scream that they had done this to me. Instead, I said quietly, "I'm just taking back what's mine." That evening I got a call from Dad. His voice was trembling. "Jade, please. You don't understand. Grant made me do it." "Then why didn't you stop him?" Snap. "Because he threatened us all. He said he'd ruin us if I didn't pay." Something about his tone felt real, terrified, broken. But it didn't excuse it. Not anymore. When the case went public, our last name was everywhere. Father-daughter fraud scandal. College student exposes family crime ring. It was surreal, seeing my face blurred on the news. Liam stood by me through it all, even when I broke down in the courthouse bathroom before my testimony. "I can't do this," I whispered. He squeezed my hand. "You already did the hardest part. You told the truth." During the hearing, I faced my father. His eyes were bloodshot. He couldn't look at me. When the prosecutor presented the documents I'd found, Dad's head dropped. The judge asked, "Mr. Cooper, did you authorize these loans under your daughter's name?" He whispered, "Yes." My throat closed. Hearing it out loud, yes, it broke me in a way silence never could. Grant, however, denied everything. Murking. But then Officer Reynolds entered with new evidence. Bank transfers from Grant's company directly into offshore accounts linked to the loans. Grant's smirk vanished. Within minutes, the courtroom erupted. Dad was arrested for fraud and identity misuse. Grant for money laundering and coercion. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like standing in the ruins of my own family. That night, I sat outside the courthouse, watching the flashing police lights fade into darkness. Liam sat beside me quietly. "Justice isn't always pretty," he said. I nodded, tears sliding down my cheeks. "No. But it's real." 3 months passed. The noise of the trial died down, but the silence that replaced it was heavy. I had become that girl in town, the one who turned in her father. People whispered when I passed. Some called me brave. Others called me cruel. But none of them had lived through the betrayal I had. Then one morning a plain white envelope arrived. No return address. Just my name. Inside was a handwritten letter. "Jade, I don't expect forgiveness. I just need you to know the truth. I was drowning. Grant promised he'd help me pay off the mortgage if I used your name for one deal. I thought I could fix it before you noticed. But he kept pulling me deeper. I didn't want you to lose college. I wanted us to survive. Dad." Tears blurred the ink. For the first time, I saw the broken man behind the betrayal. But the scars he left were too deep for pity. Later that week, Mom visited me. She looked older, fragile. "Your father's been admitted to the prison hospital," she said quietly. "He's not doing well." My heart twisted. For months, I'd imagined revenge. But now I just felt tired. Liam encouraged me to go. "Closure doesn't mean forgetting," he said. "It means setting yourself free." So I went. When I entered the hospital wing, I barely recognized him. The strong man who once carried me on his shoulders looked small, fragile, ashamed. He looked up, eyes wet. "You look just like your mom when she was your age," he whispered. I didn't know what to say. "I wanted to hate you," I said softly. "But I think I just miss who you used to be." He reached for my hand weakly. "I'm sorry, Jade. You deserved better." For the first time in months, I didn't pull away. "I know," I whispered. When I left, the nurse stopped me. "He talks about you every day. Says you're his punishment and his pride." That night I cried for both of us. Not because justice hurt, but because forgiveness did too. The next morning I checked my email. There it was, a message from Brightview University, the school that had revoked my admission months ago. Dear Jade Cooper, your case inspired our Board of Trustees. We're reinstating your scholarship under our Integrity Grant program. Welcome to Brightview. I laughed through tears. For the first time, my name was connected to something good again. When I opened the email from Brightview University, I couldn't stop smiling. For the first time in over a year, the word congratulations had my name next to it. It didn't feel real. The same name that had been dragged through fraud reports, police records, and news articles was finally being celebrated. I sat staring at the screen, tears streaming down my face, when Liam burst into my apartment. You got it, didn't you? He asked, grinning. I nodded, unable to speak. He lifted me off the ground, spinning me around. You did it, Jade. You actually did it. That night, we celebrated with takeout noodles and cheap sparkling cider. Between laughter and memories, I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. The pain was still there, but it no longer owned me. Over the next few months, I started classes at Brightview. Walking across campus felt surreal. No one knew me as the girl whose dad stole her college fund. I was just Jade Cooper, a freshman majoring in business and law, determined to protect others from the kind of betrayal I'd faced. In my first semester, I wrote a paper about financial abuse within families. My professor, Dr. Williams, was so impressed that he asked me to present it at a student conference. I titled it Stolen Futures: When Family Becomes the Thief. It wasn't just an assignment, it was my story retold with purpose. After the talk, several students approached me, sharing their own stories. Parents who'd drained savings, siblings who'd taken inheritance money, spouses who'd signed loans behind their backs. I realized I wasn't alone. My pain had company, and my voice could make a difference. That's how the idea for FutureSafe was born. Liam helped me design the website, a platform for students to learn about financial safety, credit protection, and how to detect fraud. We started small, a few blog posts, an Instagram page, and a hotline number. But within months, it exploded. Local news picked it up. Student turned victim creates platform to protect youth. I was invited to interviews, podcasts, even school workshops. For the first time, I was in control of the story. One evening, while organizing donations for the platform, I received a letter from the correctional facility. My hands trembled as I opened it. Dear Jade, I saw your article in the paper. I'm proud of you. You've done something good out of something terrible. I know I don't deserve to say this, but thank you for not letting my mistakes define you. Your old man finally learned the value of a clean slate. Dad. I read it twice. Then again. The words weren't perfect, but they were honest. And that was more than I ever thought I'd get from him. Later that week I visited him. It wasn't dramatic, no big tears or speeches. Just a quiet conversation between a father and daughter, separated by a wall of glass and a lifetime of regret. I heard you're helping other kids, he said softly. I'm trying, I replied. He smiled faintly. You always were the strong one. When I left, he pressed his hand to the glass. For the first time I didn't look away. That night I sat on my balcony watching the city lights, thinking about everything that had happened. The lies, the loss, the lessons. And somewhere in that reflection, I realized something powerful. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It frees the future. FutureSafe became more than a project, it became a movement. By year's end, we'd partnered with 2 universities and received funding from a youth trust. Liam and I celebrated with coffee instead of champagne this time. We'd both learned the value of staying grounded. When I looked in the mirror before bed, I saw the girl I used to be. Scared, betrayed, and broken. But behind her eyes, a new Jade stood taller. I wasn't my father's mistake anymore. I was my own redemption. Graduation morning felt like a dream I'd once written off as impossible. I stood before the mirror, adjusting the blue robe that shimmered under the morning light. My cap slipped twice before I laughed and gave up fixing it perfectly. Liam waited by the door, holding 2 cups of coffee. Ready to change the world, valedictorian, he teased. I rolled my eyes, smiling. ready to breathe again. As I walked across the stage that afternoon, I could see my mother in the crowd, tears streaming down her face. Even from a distance, I could feel her pride. My father wasn't there, he couldn't be, but a part of me knew he was watching somehow. After the ceremony, I found a small envelope tucked inside the graduation flowers my mom handed me. My heart skipped. Inside was a folded letter and a check for $25,000. The letter was written in Dad's handwriting. Jade, I promised I'd make it right one day. This isn't college money, it's everything I earned working inside. Teaching accounting to other inmates helped me find purpose again. They paid me little, but I saved every cent. It's yours now. Build something better. Love, Dad. I sat there frozen. The tears came before I could stop them. All those nights I'd cursed his name, and now he'd spent years quietly trying to repay what he'd taken. That night, I transferred every cent of that check into FutureSafe's education fund. I didn't keep a penny. It felt like the right way to close the circle, the money that once stole my dreams now funding others. Months later, I was invited to speak at a youth summit in Washington. Standing under the bright stage lights, I began my speech with a truth I had once been ashamed of. My name is Jade Cooper. At 18, I lost everything because of someone I loved. But that loss taught me something no classroom ever could. Your past doesn't define you, your choices do. The room was silent. Then came applause that felt like thunder. Afterward, a young girl approached me, tears in her eyes. My mom stole my scholarship funds, she said softly. I thought I'd never recover. But your story gave me hope. Hugged her. Then that's why it all happened, I whispered. So we could both start over. Years later, FutureSafe expanded to dozens of campuses. Liam became my business partner, and eventually my husband. We ran the organization side by side, dedicating every success to the lessons pain had taught us. My father passed away quietly one winter. The letter he left behind was short. You turned my debt into purpose. You made me proud, Jade. I finally see the woman I hoped you'd become. I visited his grave often, not out of grief but gratitude. Because forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means healing without hate. As I stood there one last time before moving to a new city, the wind carried his words through my memory. I'll make it right. And he did. When I got back home, I hung my graduation photo on the wall above my desk. Beneath it, in bold letters, was FutureSafe's slogan. Turn pain into power. I sat down, opened my laptop, and started writing this story. Not as a victim's confession, but as a survivor's testimony. My dad emptied my college fund to pay his loans. But in the end, I made him regret it. Not with revenge, but with redemption. And that's how it all came full circle. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, don't let it destroy you. Let it define your strength. Share your story in the comments below, and remember, every broken promise can become your new beginning. Like, subscribe, and never stop fighting for your own future.